Welcome back to the Metal Exchange. This is Chris. I'm here with Justin, and Power Quest week rolls on, and we have a very special guest with us, the current vocalist of both Power Quest and Dendera, the wonderful Ashley Edison. Ashley, welcome to the Metal Exchange. How are you today?
Hello, guys. I'm very well, very well. How are you guys?
Fantastic.
Can't complain. Justin?
Doing very well. Very, very excited to have you on. We certainly appreciate your time checking in from the UK, which we've learned is a 5-hour time difference, not a 6-hour time difference. But with that backdrop, welcome to the Metal Exchange. We appreciate having you on.
No. My pleasure. Thank you, guys. And, as I said before we started this, I think it's a great podcast you guys have got going. So, pleasure to be involved.
Cheers.
Appreciate that. So, we had mentioned before we started recording just that I thought speaking to you would be really a great way to add to all this discussion we've been having this week about Power Quest, because you have the distinction of being a fan like us, but also a member of the band like Steve. So you've been on both sides. So I thought, what a perfect way to kind of marry those two, those two sides, the other two episodes that we're doing, by having somebody who's been on both sides of the fence. So if you want to kind of just talk about how you discovered Power Quest and maybe like if you remember what the first song or the first album or what kind of drew you towards being a fan of them, just kind of start from there, and then we'll kind of just go from there.
Sure. So I think it was 2002, 2003 when I discovered Power Quest. So me and my brother Brad, who's also in Power Quest now as well, we were just starting to get into power metal. I discovered bands like Dragon Force and Firewind, who were two of my big favourites at the time. And I was just looking for more, and we were just browsing the internet for similar bands to go and discover. And Power Quest is one we fell into, and I think "Far Away" was the song we heard first, and we had our minds blown by it. We just couldn't believe how good this song was, how catchy this song was. So we binged that for ages, and then discovered lots of their other stuff, and we were just big fans. We eventually had all the CDs. I remember us going and buying Master of Illusion and putting it on our Xbox so we can listen to the songs while we were playing our racing games. And it was one of those ones that I was just genuinely a big fan of it. And we discovered it when, I think, not too long after they had started. And I remember they had that sort of mp3.com boom is what I remember. They put a song on there and everyone went a bit mad about it. And a lot of people back then were looking at Power Quest as one of the sort of forefront bands of power metal. People were looking at them as hugely influential for the genre. They were just a band I just fell in love with. I just couldn't stop listening to them. And I had their shirts, I had their CDs, and I was an enormous fan. I was, singing all their songs as, trying to anyway at the time. Alessio, the previous singer, was a wonderful vocalist. So, it was trying to learn those songs was tough at the time.
Did you have ambitions of being a vocalist at this time, or was it not quite there yet? Did you know you had the chops to be a professional singer, or like where were you in that part of the journey?
So, no, not really. It was one of those ones that I've always been able to sort of hold a tune. I never counted myself as a singer when I was younger. But I was always into music, and I was learning how to play guitar. And, I went on to college really trying to be a guitar player, really trying to be this unbelievable Brian May-esque Slash style guitar player. And I can still play pretty well, but, I could always sing. So people would say, we get put in like college bands and stuff like that, and they'd say, "Oh, why don't you sing?" I'd be like, "No, I want to play guitar." No, sing. And people would encourage me to sing because I guess other people saw stuff that I didn't. And I remember I had a tutor at the time who sat me down and went, he said, I don't think you realise what you've got there. Like, and he gave me some techniques to sort of access ranges to my voice that I didn't really know I could do. And I used to, I was still living with my parents, obviously, because I was just started off college education. So I was like, 16, 17. And I used to wait for them to leave the house. And I'd then put on some Iron Maiden or some Judas Priest at the top and try and sing this at the top of my lungs. So that's how I started my singing journey there. Power Quest really didn't come into it. It was one of those ones that I just enjoyed the music at the time. I tried to play it on guitar. I just couldn't because Andrea was incredible. So I was trying to, but when I had to learn those songs, eventually I was a different beast altogether. So
did you find that your musical taste kind of gravitated towards the power metal, or was it more of a traditional style like an Iron Maiden or a Judas Priest, or did you kind of listen to other things at the time? Because, I just find with myself that my taste has obviously changed over time a little bit, and I'm just kind of curious as to the path that your musical appreciation has taken over time.
I don't know. It was a massive combination of all sorts of rock and metal at the time. When I first started getting into that style of music, it was I guess, how can you word it? The friendlier, the cleaner side of heavy metal, your Iron Maidens and your power metal and stuff like that. And it wasn't until I got to college and I met other people and I learned about all these other bands where it was like Trivium or Killswitch Engage or Machine Head, and then I did deep dives into Pantera and stuff like that as well. That's when I started to appreciate that style of music. And that's when I started to add some sort of grit into my voice as well. Because I was like, well, I can do that side of it. I want to do this side of it as well now. And try and, add as much as I possibly can to my voice. So there was no, I don't know. In terms of how my voice was musically, I'd say it was more traditional metal in terms of, in my opinion, I think Bruce Dickinson is the greatest ever, in my opinion. A lot of people will say that's wrong, but that's my opinion. And he was one of the ones that I was like, wow, I want to sound like Bruce. I want to sound like that guy. So I'd say that was probably my biggest influence in terms of that. But I'd go far to say that everything I do now musically is an influence of everything I listen to in the metal scene.
So you are at Power Quest's supposed last show at the Underworld when we thought the band was disbanding. Had you seen the band live prior to that night? And we'll go into more details about that night because something very cool happened that night. But what had you seen? I mean, I know that I was kind of doing a little bit of research and I found out that I had to joke to Justin about, man, that would have been cool if Power Quest toured with Threshold. And I did some research and found out that they actually did. And I saw that they were tacked on to some Halloween shows, some Stradivarius shows. There were some really big name bands. And had those shows come to the U.S. with Power Quest in tow, I mean, I would have gone wherever I needed to go to see them. You have them right in your backyard, so if you wanted to go see them, you could have. So question is, did you get to see them live, or were you on stage with the band the first time you saw them live?
No, so the first time I saw them live was actually, so it was just after Alessio had left. I wasn't at the point where I was going to a lot of shows when they were around at the time, so I was only just sort of really getting into it. But I saw them when they were doing the Blood Alliance shows. I remember at the time, I thought that album was superb. And, there's some of my favourite Power Quest songs of all time on that record. So that's when I got to see them. So yeah, I've only seen them previously once. So the second time I saw them was quite a special night, I'd say. So,
what were your thoughts as a fan of that change in vocals, going from Alessio to Chitty, who has such a completely different style? How did was it jarring for you as a fan to hear? I mean, Alessio had sung everything, all 4 albums up to that point. How did you feel as a fellow vocalist? What was that sound like to you?
I wouldn't say jarring because I appreciated it for what it was. I still think those songs were superb, just completely different. I'd say it's one of those ones that it was. How can I word this? I would say it was just different, but thoroughly enjoyable. I'd say would you hear Alessio singing those songs, for example? Maybe not. It might not be that sort of vocal. But you definitely wouldn't hear Chitty singing Alessio songs. So I think maybe they were just trying to mature as a band and maybe mature their sound. They definitely had the songs were completely different to the old, power metal style of songs. They were a lot more AOR in there, a lot more just heavy metal as well. And I think it probably was right at the time for what Steve was trying to write. When Steve was writing those songs, he wanted to sound like that. So as a vocalist, it was nice. It was a nice change of pace, but it definitely was a different sound that was completely unexpected at the time.
Yeah, we talk about that in depth when we talked about the whole history of the band, because to me that was such a fascinating time. And me personally, I think that was the first time I was looking forward to an upcoming Power Quest album, because when I got into the band, the previous 4 albums were already available. So this is like my first album as a fan. Oh, wow. Like really getting excited for it to come out. So take us to the show at the Underground that I mentioned earlier. Where are you in your career with Dendera at this point, and how did this come about that you would go on stage and sing with Power Quest on, I think they had, this was their last club show, and I think they had one more festival show after this, and then the band would go on hiatus for a few years. Let's talk about that night, because at the time, I was not aware of who Dendera was or who you were, and I just saw, like, look at this lucky dude who gets to go on stage with this band that he loves and sing with them. I thought, what a cool moment. And now, obviously, I look back on it, and it's like this might have been Ash's first rehearsal, or what do you call it? His first
audition.
First audition. Kind of like we talk about when Tommy Karavik came out and sang with Camelot at Prague Power years ago, like years before he got the gig. That was like his audition. So, take it away. Tell us about how that all came about.
It's quite a long-winded story, so bear with.
We have all day.
So in 2011, I'd say it was. So Dendera had started to just get some really cool shows. We were about to support bands like Saxon. We'd got some stuff with Ailstorm and some other sort of bands that were big at the time and stuff like that. And I'd reached out to Steve and said to him, look, I'm a big Power Quest fan. I'd love Dendera to support you guys at some point. Now, at the time, most people didn't reply to me. If I was trying, promoters didn't care at the time. Other bands were like, nah, I'm not giving this guy a chance. Steve got back to me really quick. And he said, hey, Ash, send me over your stuff and I'll see what I can do at some point. Now, we were supposed to do some shows with them, but they got moved. They got cancelled for other reasons. So a couple of years later, so 2013, Steve drops me a message and just says, hey, Ash, Power Quest are doing one big final headline show at the Underworld. Do Dendera want to be the support? And I went, yeah, we'd love it. I'd be so proud to do that because it was a big moment for me personally. So the day before the show, Steve drops me a message and just says, do you want to come and join us on stage for a song? I went, oh, okay, yeah. What song's that? And he went, do you want to come and sing Neverworld, our final song for the night? You can do a chorus and a verse, do whatever you want. And I went, yeah, okay, yeah, that'd be really good, thank you. So for that whole day, I was nervously looking at these like one paragraph of lyrics I've got to remember before I go on the stage, thinking, oh no, God, what am I going to do? And yeah, I had a great time. I remember feeling so nervous before that, knowing I was going to go up on stage and sing with this band that meant so much to me. So that was my first time I got to sing with the band, and I remember a few people recorded it. My brother Brad recorded it, and it went on YouTube and stuff like that, and it got loads of nice comments. So the band then separates. I then continue with Dendera, do what I'm doing, and we just got off. We've done some really cool tours since then with Fozzy and Anvil and Queensryche and some other, really cool bands that we've always wanted to play with and, admired. So Boxing Day 2015 comes along, and Steve just pops up on Facebook and just says, "Hey Ash, how you doing? Have you had a nice Christmas?" Now, I know Steve, and whenever he messages, he's up to something. Okay, so I was like, what does Steve Williams want? No. And he said, he then just said to me, he said, we were just talking, and I jokingly at one point said, maybe you should get the band back together. And he said something like, oh, maybe I should. And then, are you free for a coffee tomorrow or something? And I went, yeah, okay, yeah, sure, we'll go for coffee. So this is the first time I met up with him outside of a professional environment. And sit down with Steve, and we get to talking. And then he said, basically, we're getting the band back together. And he explained that the vocalist position is available. And I thought he was going to ask me to audition. And he said, everywhere I go, people show me this video of you joining us on stage and absolutely killing it. And I went, oh, that's very nice. Thank you very much. And that's when I got the moment. I goosebumps up my spine. I thought, he's going to ask me. And then he went, so basically, I just want to know if you want to be the new singer of Power Quest. And I went, yeah, I do. Yeah, great. I shook his hand there and then. And we had to keep it very quiet. We were keeping it quiet until we recorded some new stuff and got some preparations ready and finalised it all. And then we announced the show. We announced the comeback. We announced these shows we were doing, and I couldn't believe the feedback we were getting. We were, I had some unbelievable messages from people that just couldn't quite believe what was happening. I was gobsmacked the reaction. Personally, I didn't even think Power Quest getting back together would have the reaction it did. It was such a big moment. The people just, I couldn't check my Facebook without having like 1,000 friend requests and messages from people from Brazil and Mexico and Japan, all just saying how excited they are to hear the Power Quest about together and I'm singing from. So yeah, it really was a case of I went from being a fan and joined them on stage and got a chance to sing 30 seconds with them, and then 2 years later or so I'm being asked to be the singer of the band. And we did these shows which were absolutely packed out. I went and recorded the Face the Raven, which is a track that I'm very proud of. And then the next thing I was doing playing festivals on main stages in different countries and touring in Japan and supporting other bands like Dragon Force on tour, where we did it was really, really cool and very special that it happened in that way for me. I whether I ever get the chance to play at Wembley Arena or the O2, no one can ever take that away from me. That's something I will be immensely proud of forever.
That story is why we wanted to have you on the podcast. It's just such a great, uplifting, awesome story. So, Justin, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm like, I just, you can see the smile on my face because I love hearing that. I wanted to ask you about the Face the Raven EP, sure, which was kind of the first thing that you recorded with the lineup. Was that material just kind of presented to you, or had Steve basically constructed the songs, or was it something that you kind of worked on together as a band and then recorded the EP?
So Steve had the basic of the song down. He knew what he wanted to go like and what he wanted to sound like. And then we got into a studio and wrote it and finalised it all together, essentially, just put the finishing touches on it, So the reason that song sounds the way it does was because of the individuals that were in that room at the time. So with that material, it was more that the basic parts were presented to us. Steve said, "This is an idea I've got. I want to do this," and then we worked on it with him, and then we went to the studio and did it. And it's still one of my favorite songs I've ever recorded, to be honest.
You got to. My timing. It would seem to be that you went to the studio, you recorded the Sixth Dimension album, and then it was after that you would hit the road and you'd get to go to Japan and the United States and go to a lot of, like, there was just a lot of, Power Quest had a lot of cool shows that were right before Sixth Dimension was officially released. Talk to us about that experience of really going on the road and kind of getting out there beyond just the UK, but like getting to go to Japan and getting to go to the United States and meet us in person, which I'm sure was an absolute pleasure for you.
It was.
Talk to us about that experience, because I'm sure that must have been. I mean, I know personally that you said it was an incredible experience, but tell the audience, because I thought just seeing some of those pictures from Japan, I was just like, wow, I would have loved to have been there for that. I mean, that was super cool. Just go ahead and talk about that, the touring experience and kind of getting on the road for the first time.
Sure.
With Power Quest.
We did the first things we did Power Quest. We had these couple of headline shows, and then we thought, right, we're going to see what festival offers come in and all sorts of tours like that. So 2017 in particular was one of the busiest years, because that's when the new album was coming out, and it was almost like every single day I'd call Steve, or Steve would call me, and I'd be like, we've got this offer, he's got this offer, we've got this, and it was just incredibly busy. So, when we got the chance to do these shows in Japan, I remember first night in Tokyo, they had a curtain in front of the stage, and our intro track hit. The curtain lifts, and there's 1,500 people all losing their absolute minds and singing every single song. Like I was in awe to the point where it hit me, and I just got this rush of adrenaline and all these goosebumps just hit me that this was actually happening. And I was in Japan, currently in Tokyo, and it was mad. We had people waiting outside the venue for us to come in and sign their stuff, and we had people running up to us in the street with flags they had made, Power Quest flags and everything. So it was really quite a surreal experience being over there. And one of the best things I ever did. I still to this day think Japan is one of the coolest places I've ever seen. It is mesmerizing when you're there. We did. So we had some European festivals. Went to Japan, straight from Japan to play Prog Power. Come back, had like a few weeks off. I think it was either a few weeks off or we had some other shows. I can't remember. I think it was a few weeks off, and then like a 2-week tour with Dragon Force as well. So it was really cool, and a really busy year in terms of the touring. We were supposed to be doing it all again in 2020 and stuff like that, but obviously for what's happened in the world, it didn't happen. It's been postponed a little bit. So next year is the plan of when we start doing all the busier stuff again.
Definitely looking forward to it. I know that when Sixth Dimension came out, like not just in the mainstream press, if you will, but the fan reaction to that album was just simply overwhelming, and it was like the perfect marriage, I think, between that old sound, that the band had obviously, kind of cut their teeth on, mixed with that Blood Alliance songwriting to a certain extent, and it was kind of like in my opinion anyway, just the perfect marriage between the two sounds, with a frontman who was made to sing those songs, right? Because I know we spoke about Chidi earlier. I happen to love his voice. He's done great stuff with Red Circuit and stuff like that. I never thought he was the best fit for Power Quest. I just think he's a great vocalist. Whereas your vocals, I thought were just like tailor made for their sound and for kind of like what the new Power Quest would be, in 2017, obviously, and then going forward from there. So the reason I bring this up is that the band just had such a positive feedback loop, I guess, from this album. I was wondering if there was then pressure to, when you were kind of writing the new singles that have come out in the last couple of years, to kind of keep that momentum up. And then you mentioned the touring that hopefully will take place next year. What's like the future trajectory like?
So firstly, thank you for those kind words. That's very, very nice of you. When we did those songs from a vocal point of view, it wasn't just me that wanted to hit the ground running. It was Steve and the guys said, we want to show you off. We want to, and I know with Power Quest in particular, Alessio is a very popular vocalist and actually one of my best mates now. I love the guy. Okay. So, but at the time there was a lot of pressure to make sure that I come in and people go, wow, okay, that's a singer. So that's why Face the Raven happened. At the beginning of Face the Raven, there's this big belty scream that I do. And that was a off the cuff in the studio thing where I said to Steve, I think I should put a scream there. And Steve went, I think you should put a scream there. So I put this big power metal scream there. And I sung that when I had the flu. I was really unwell when I did the album. We were on such time constraints. I had to get it done. So in between each take, I'm nearly passing out and I'm drinking honey and lemon and everything like that. So yeah, that's why that album happened. And that's why that song happened. But in terms of the future plans, so I guess you could say that there's some pressure in terms of like, we need to make sure the next album is as good, if not better than the last one. I go as far to say that, 90 to 95% of the people I've seen that are Power Quest fans said they love the record. I'm a big fan of it myself. But when it came to the new singles, I think we just want to play stuff that we enjoy as well. So when we did Bound for Glory, that was an effort when me, Steve and Glyn wrote this song and I had this chorus hook that I said to Steve, I've got this idea. And then he had an idea and it was basically exactly the same chorus that me and him had written. And just, we were like, well, that's it then. It needs to be how it is. So, and we found that is pretty much the blueprint of the stuff we want to do. It's really catchy. It's almost got more of an old school Power Quest feel to it as well. Very power metal. And I think you'll see more of that type of stuff as well, because really, as much as we want to do it and play stuff that we enjoy as well, we do want to give people what they want as well. We do want people to enjoy these songs, because there's nothing better than going to a festival and hearing people sing these songs back at you or telling you about how wonderful this particular song is. And we're very conscious about making sure the next album is in that vein as well. So you're not going to hear anything experimental or some avant-garde jazz or anything. You're going to hear us do some you're going to hear us do some power metal, and that's the aim anyway.
Porcupine Tree is back. I'll leave that stuff to them.
But yeah, we won't be able to do that. That's fine.
Yeah, the two new singles are out of this world. I especially think Bound for Glory is just unbelievable. And I remember, you telling me how proud you were of that track, and it's really just wonderful. Do you happen to know if these two tracks are just going to be kind of standalone, or are they going to be on the next full-length album, or are they just kind of be like these kind of singles that just float and they're just out there, kind of the way Face the Raven was kind of like a preview for Sixth Dimension, where like two of those three songs would end up on the album, albeit the guitar parts were re-recorded to my knowledge. But do you see these songs ending up on a future album, or is this just kind of like, this was not to rip the lyrics out of the song, but was this the time and the place for those songs to just exist kind of, in and of themselves?
So it's hard to say. The songs might end up on the album. It depends on who we speak to about it. We want to make sure it's what the label want, what we want, and stuff like that as well. So the songs might end up on the album. The songs might not. We might just go, look, here's 8 to 10 brand new songs, and then you've got those other standalones. Personally, I think they're strong enough that if they were put on an album, they'd be great tracks on it. And I don't want them to also get lost and be songs that people forget about, or only sort of deep cuts that true Power Quest fans will ever listen to again. So that's the benefit of having them on an album, that they're there on this piece of art forever. So there's loads of things to discuss in terms of Whether they definitely will or not, I couldn't possibly say. I wouldn't be surprised if they did, though.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So, before we kind of get into you telling us about what's going on with you currently, we have a decent amount of listeners who are Prog Power USA attendees, obviously both of us as well. We'd like to know kind of what the experience of coming to the US and playing at Prog Power was like for you, and talk about like what your nothing set in stone, but just personally, do you want to come back to the US? And I know that like I've, as a fan, have been waiting a long time to see Power Quest get onto some sort of US tour, which I think would be so much fun. And then I'd have to figure out how to follow you guys throughout the country without losing my job. Yeah. Just kind of wanted to talk about your experience in the US, even though it was just a few short days. But we always like to add a little extra for our Prog Power fans out there. So go right ahead.
I cannot speak highly enough about that festival. I had the best time. It is one of the most welcoming, beautiful festivals I've ever been to and been a part of. Obviously, we were supposed to play it last year and this year, but it all got postponed because of the COVID and stuff. And we had I'm desperate to come back. Whether it be as a fan or as a performer. I'm always badgering the organisers to be like, can we come back now? Can we come back now? Can we come back now? And it said we were supposed to be there this year and last. So I'm very optimistic about what is to come in hopefully the very near future. It is one of my favourite experiences I've ever had. Honestly, I cannot speak highly enough. I've never been at a festival where everybody you speak to is so friendly. There's one thing I'd say about festivals in general is, I think I'd be lying if I said there isn't usually one or two people you don't really want to speak to. You usually try to avoid a few people, and you're like, oh no, it's them. And then, but with Prog Power, everyone was so nice. Whether it be someone who was there as a fan or one of the organisers, we had the best time. When we arrived, I was so miserable when we got into the country, and I shouldn't have been at first, but I had a really bad cold, and I just got off a flight, and I couldn't hear anything, and I was sneezing and coughing, and Nathan met us at the airport and took us for food in this like sports bar, and just being around the guy, my enthusiasm levels were through the roof already. I was so excited to be involved with this. He bought us all, mac and cheese and all these other American treats that I was desperate to try. And, we were so excited and so ready to get on stage. And, we were the first band on for when we first played Prog Power. And it was a special night. We two of our guitar players couldn't make it. So we had Bill Hudson and Chris Peterson fill in for us. So it was one of those things, we didn't get a rehearsal. We had to just do the show and see how it went. And, I think it went really well at the time. But, the fact that when we did get asked to come back, albeit that it's been, moved or cancelled now, we were going to be one of the co-headliners of the festival. So I think it speaks volumes on the effect power metal and maybe Power Quest has had on that festival. But also the organisers were so instrumental and wonderful in having us there in the first place. When Power Quest announced they were getting back together, Nathan was on to Steve straight away, said, I want you guys here and I need you guys here. And I can't speak highly enough of those guys. They're all so friendly and welcoming. And the same goes for all you guys. I've stayed in touch with a lot of people I've met. Chris, you being one of the people I speak to probably the most in terms of from Prog Power, and I don't do that with just anybody. This is because that festival had such a big effect on me. So I still talk about it with my friends now. I've got loads of friends that they'll say, tell me some festival stories, and I'll say, there's this one festival in America where everyone is so nice, and occasionally you meet someone dressed up as a dragon. you know. But yeah, no, I love it. I mean, it's great.
Were you glad that you guys went on first so that you can kind of just enjoy the rest of the time? You wouldn't have to be nervous. You could just take it all in and just kind of be fans the rest of the days that you were there.
Yeah, massively. You know, we weren't. With most festivals, we're not usually like the first band on. You know, we're usually a bit higher up and stuff like that and stuff. So it was quite nice to go there, and then I just had 4 or 5 days where I just always had a drink in my hand, but I also wanted to try other things. I went to, you know, some touristy parts of Atlanta, but every single night I went to the after parties to hang out just because everyone was there and they were so nice. You know, we went to me, Alessio, and Steve. We went to a baseball game, and after that we were saying, probably going to have an early night tonight, guys. We're pretty tired. Yeah, sure. And we were like, yeah. On the way back there, I said, I'm definitely going to go to the after party, by the way. And we all did in the end. I think me and Alessio ended up staying there till 3 a.m. or something like that, just talking to people and enjoying ourselves. So yeah, no, it was really cool.
Sounds about right.
And I want to just make sure that I say this before we move on to anything else. But as far as those after parties go, the thing that I think means the most to me looking back on it is that I got to spend a little bit of time talking to Paul, and it's the only time I ever got to meet him, and I'm so glad that I did because he had such a zest for just everything, for life and for the band, and he was such a sweet man, and I loved talking to him. He was so happy to be there, and I was so sad to find out that he passed away because he was just such a really pleasant and wonderful guy. So I look back at that, and I have these pictures of all of us, and you know, I have a picture with you and Alessio, and it was like, here's me and the 2 singers from Power Quest, and I'm just this jobber in the middle. But
you know, Paul,
to be able to meet Paul and to pick your brain and to pick Steve's brain and oh my God, as a fan, it was so incredible. But I'm going to make sure that we mention Paul and all 3 of the podcasts that we're doing for this week. But he was a special guy, and I know I could speak for all the fans to say that we definitely miss him, and I'm just grateful that I got to meet him and chat with him because he was really just a really nice guy.
Paul was probably my closest friend in the band when I joined. You know, he was so down to earth and so humble, and I get really sad when I talk about him. You know, there'll be days where I say to people, I'm thinking about Paul today a lot, and he's just often on my mind. And you know, he was that person that we would be on the road, be on a tour for a few days, and I'd be having a bit of a down day, and he'd be having a bit of a down day, and we'd be there for each other. Or if I was feeling down, I'd say, I just need a bit of a chat. And he'd be like, yeah, of course. And we'd just talk. And he was just always there. And he was like, you know, the biggest, friendliest giant you could possibly meet. He was one of the loveliest guys. When I joined the band, he was my biggest supporter. He was my biggest fan. And he goes, these songs, what you've done, you've added this new edge to the band. He was just so caring and considerate, and he had that effect on everyone. Any Power Quest fan that ever met him, like, you didn't feel he had any agenda other than just to be a nice guy. One of my best experiences I had with him was we were playing we were doing a UK tour, and we were in a place called Newcastle, and Newcastle is home to my favourite football team, Newcastle United, and I wanted to go on a stadium tour. And I was like, I just want to go and see the ground and stuff like that. And everyone else was a bit like, no, we're going to go do sound check and everything. And I was sort of going to go. I was going to plod along my own. And Paul was like, no, I'll come with. That'll be great. And we just had the best day. He wasn't a Newcastle fan, but he just wanted to keep me, you know, company and spend time with his mate doing something that was interesting. One of the best times I had with him was we were just walking around the stadium, being shown all this stuff, and just getting funny pictures together and just having a real good time. And I'll always look back with fond memories of him. And I cannot explain how devastated I was when I heard the news. Like, I just sort of dropped my phone out of my hand and couldn't quite believe this has happened, because he was, and I mean this, probably the nicest person I've ever been on tour with, in terms of he was just there to be a nice guy and didn't have any other agenda than just to be there and help people. So, yeah, what a lovely guy. And everyone from Prog Power that I know met him had nothing but nice things to say about him as well. They were just devastated when they heard he had gone, because even in the 4 or 5 days we were there, he had left such an impression on people already. It was quite wonderful, actually.
I can definitely vouch for that, for sure. And I think everything you just said is just a lovely and fitting tribute to a hell of a guy. So anyway, on a more positive note, this is we're going to give you the floor right here. Talk about whatever you want. Talk about Dendera. Talk about Power Quest. Talk about AEW. Talk about whatever you want. This is you have the floor. Plug whatever you want. Plug your social media. Plug your band social media. Go crazy.
Are you more AEW than WWE?
Oh my! Right now, I don't think there's ever been a time in my life where I watched less wrestling than I do now. It's just I still love going back and watching old stuff. I was just telling Justin earlier, I've been watching Bash at the Beach 1997 and seeing Chris Jericho still wrestling 25 years ago. But I catch AEW when I can. I can't sit through WWE anymore, but AEW I think has more guys that I like to see, but I also think that they could be creatively better. I think they have too many people and they don't focus enough. Like, it feels unfocused, but that's just my 2 cents on that.
I agree with you. I didn't originally, but I feel they're getting too many ex-WWE guys now. But it's I still stay up to date with it. My brothers are enormous fans. Like, they'll be the ones telling me, they'll be like, "Oh my God, have you heard CM Punk's come back?" I'm like, "No, I haven't, but I'm going to now. That sounds great." So, I stay in touch with it mainly because they're such big fans. But that's quite interesting. But no, in terms of, I've got some really exciting stuff to come up with both bands. Power Quest, you're going to start seeing some announcements for what's coming for next year. And with Dendera, we've got plans to hit the studio this year for a new album, which we are very excited about. It's probably our most complex and heaviest material. I don't want to sound like one of those bands that ever says, they always say, "Oh, this is heavier than the last stuff," but this is really something we've gone into to make sure it sounds exactly how we wanted it to be. So that's on my mind a lot at the moment. We're focusing on that. And feel free to follow us on our social media pages. We've got the Power Quest official at Instagram, and then Dendera UK on Instagram as well. It'll be really cool to hear some feedback from you guys that are listening, of what you think of the previous Power Quest stuff, what you want to hear coming from Power Quest, and same for Dendera stuff. Please feel free to check out more of it and let us know what you think, because there's a lot of material out there that you can have a listen to.
Fantastic. I do want to ask one last thing, and I don't know if I might say that 6 more times before we're done, but to me, Power Quest and Dendera are 2 very different bands stylistically. Do you feel like, because you have both of these bands, you can kind of get your fix to sing power metal in one hand, and then you're fixed to sing more like heavier traditional heavy metal with Dendera? Like, is that like the perfect marriage for you to have these 2 bands that fulfill 2 different fandoms for you?
Very much so. I think since I've been in Power Quest, it's been even more of a conscious effort to make Dendera sound even heavier, because Dendera had never been a power metal band, but we used to get reviews saying in a magazine, great album from power metal band Dendera. It's like, no, we're not power metal. We've never been power metal. and especially now we're not power metal. There's nothing I'd say that's got any element of power metal other than I sing in Power Quest. But the bands are two different bands. The stuff we play with Dendera, we want to sound more like the bands we listen to a lot at the moment, which is your metalcore bands, even your death metal bands at points. And then Power Quest will always be Power Quest. We have many influences for that, but it's always going to be a power metal band. And I love singing both styles. I love singing everything. So, I'd be in every band I possibly could. I'd be in a pop band. I'd be in a rap band. I'd be dreadful at a rap band. I'll be honest. But I'd be in any sort of band. I just enjoy it. So, and
God forbid Bruce Dickinson calls it quits. I'm sure Iron Maiden up the road would love to have you. But
the only reason I think I wouldn't get it is because they'd be sick of me hassling them for the job every 5 seconds.
You'd have to hope that, like Steve Harris would reach out to you and just offer you the job without rehearsal. So that's all you could hope for. But you know what? I do have one last question. Okay. I promise this is the last one. Unless Justin has anything else to add, I know I've kind of usurped most of it. But, as a live singer, it's kind of a two-pronged question, but what have been your favorite Power Quest and Dendera songs to perform live, and what songs have you not performed live either at all or not often that you would like to perform live by either band?
So Dendera, we've played pretty much everything we've recorded. We try and at least once do everything. Our favourite stuff we do my favourite stuff is from the last two EPs we've released in the last couple of years. We did like a part 1 and a part 2. One called Blood Red Sky and then one called Reborn into Darkness. And there's a track called Blood Red Sky on the first one that I love performing live. It's got such a catchy chorus, I believe so anyway. And live I do this big belty high note that I always enjoy looking at people's faces at when I do. And we did a track called Reborn, where that is a song we did with CJ McMahon, who's the vocalist of Thy Art Is Murder. I reached out to him and he said, I don't usually do this sort of music, but I'll give it a go, and just absolutely smashed it on this record with us. And that is one I really enjoy live because it's very different. It's got some brutal screams in it and stuff like that as well, and one that, again, very different to Power Quest that I enjoy. And with Power Quest, when I first sung with the band, I always enjoy singing Far Away. That's really nice to do, and because we always start it with the vocal, just the vocal a cappella at first, and the whole audience sings along, and that's always quite a nice rush. And Face the Raven, just because I remember when we recorded it, and when we announced it, we saw these reviews saying amazing, but that guy's never going to be able to do that live. And I was like, okay, sure. And I made sure I do it live. I do it live every single night. I make sure of it because I went out with a point to prove. So that's one I've always enjoyed doing. And any I'd like to do, Diamond Sky. I think we haven't done that at Power Quest, and we get asked to do that one a lot. I think I'd enjoy singing that one live. So yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. Justin, take us home.
I cannot thank you enough for joining us. I look forward to hearing new material from both bands and obviously catching you live. Obviously, both are welcome. I would love to see you guys in 2023 or beyond. So I just want to thank you for joining us. I think your perspective is just so unique and so different from, quite frankly, everyone we've had on the podcast, right? Because most of the people that we've had on are, founding members or longtime members of bands, and they have a very different perspective in terms of the evolution of a band, as opposed to someone who really, like yourself, started as a fan and then evolved into, obviously, the vocalist. So I cannot thank you enough. So it's been a real pleasure. And when we hear some new music from Dendera or even Power Quest, we'd love to have you back.
No, my pleasure. Yeah, 100%. I'd look forward to it. Thank you, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ash. We really appreciate your time.
Cheers, guys.
Have a good one.